Welcome to the Placing Company YouTube channel. I'm Michael Koss,
I'm Michael Barrell.
and we're the co-founders of the Placing Company. We've made this channel to give you guys tips about the common mistakes and questions that you have about moving overseas and working. We're here in Australia about to bring you some top quality content.
And today we're going to be talking about the 5 biggest mistakes that people make when they're applying to come and work in Australia, usually on a skilled visa. Let's go. Number one, we've got not doing enough homework on the country.
Yeah, I get this a lot. So one of the questions we will always ask you in an interview is, where do you want to work? Where do you want to be? And if we hear, oh, anywhere, it says to us, you haven't actually really thought about where you want to move because you're going to be living there for years.
There is a lot more in Australia than just a few kangaroos and some wombats. So when the employer asks you, where do you want to live in the city? Or where do you want to be working if it's an employer that has multiple sites across the country? Have an idea about where you want to be. If you want to be in a city, have an idea about where in the city you want to be. Have an idea about what the culture is like in the city. The different states across Australia, they're quite different. So have a bit of research around that before you get in front of the employer.
One of the big things on that too is cost of living. I don't think people quite realize from overseas how different your money, the distance your salary is going to go in a place like Sydney versus a place like Dubbo or even a place like Adelaide or Perth. If your goal is to save money, then you should be researching where in the country you want to go to, or get in touch with people like us beforehand, because we will tell you. And in a later episode, we will run through cost of living in Australia to help you out and make these choices.
We will. And particularly with cost of living, we're in Melbourne right now. Sydney, also, as you mentioned, really expensive. The enormous difference between the rent that you will pay for a house or an apartment in Melbourne or Sydney is so much different to a place in regional Australia where you're going to be paid just the same amount of money, but you're going to be able to save an enormous amount more that you can even send home to your family or whatever your individual plans are.
Well, that's it. I was out in a regional area visiting one of our aged care sites a couple of weeks ago, and my dinner was easily 30% cheaper out at that place, which was 6 hours away from Melbourne, than what it is if I eat out in Melbourne. So that was a big reminder for me that, things change a lot depending on where you are.
Very, very different. Yeah. Should we move on to the next one?
Let's do it.
Cool. Number 2, using the same resume everywhere. I see this all the time, and it frustrates the hell out of me. So it is clear that people just recycle the same resume. And I get it. I know why, because you're applying for multiple different jobs. It can be a pain, bit of a headache, trying to refresh your resume for every different job that you're applying for. But even if you're just applying for a certain role, so say if you are a registered nurse, for instance, and you might be trained in your home country in cardiothoracics or neurology or something in like critical care, but maybe you're coming over to Australia looking for a role in aged care. Make your CV about aged care nursing, not cardiothoracics, not neurology, not... I hope you get the point. But try and make it catered to the actual position that you're going for. Doesn't need to be particularly catered for the actual employer that you're looking for, but at least for the role. So make sure that when the employer does ultimately read your resume, they know that you are specifically thinking about having a position with them in that role, not as a different nurse, in my example, as a cardiothoracics nurse, because that's what you've done before. It's all about what you're applying for.
Well, the other part of that is too, so we run a group where we connect candidates to sponsored jobs, and you just don't even get past our screening process. Let's say we're talking about IT roles, and cybersecurity is an area in Australia where there's a lot of need, and you've got a full stack dev or an AI based CV, we just won't even look at it. And that's you doing a disservice for yourself. And I think you can think about many instances. If you're doing a blast of your CV around the place, most of the time it won't be a fit. And this comes down to just having a direction, knowing what you want, tailoring the document for it. And if you put in that effort, then we're more likely to put in effort as well in getting you placed.
Definitely.
You've got to give us the advantage here to be able to help you out and also help yourself out.
just on that point, Michael, with our company in particular, we spend a lot of time with candidates. So we need to know that they're really serious about the position that they want to be working in Australia. And if we're just getting a really generalised CV from them, we know they're not that interested. Yeah. And it will not pass go.
The thing is, in Australia, with the way the visa works, the minimum you can get paid for most professions is about $70,000 Australian. And so then there's a scale and it goes up to market rate, whatever the role is going to be. What does it really take to have a CV that is worth $70,000 a year, $100,000 a year, $150,000 a year? That's the standard you need to be at in order to get these jobs and get sponsorship. It's not just whatever, you've got sitting around and throwing it out hoping that a skills shortage will lead to you getting a job. It doesn't cut it.
And not just that, Michael. We placed a couple yesterday. They're going to be on a base wage of around about $100,000, but they're going to be getting a relocation allowance.
Yep.
They're going to be getting rental assistance. So their entire salary package for the first year is going to be around about $120,000, $130,000 for that first year. So a significant amount of money, and it's worth putting in the time to make your resume fit the job that you're trying to go for. But let's not forget that most of you watching are probably thinking about long-term, getting permanent residency in Australia. So we're not even just talking about pure monetary terms here. We're talking about an entire life change. So just put the effort into the CV and just make it really, really specific to what you want to be applying for.
Yep. And what's number 3, Michael?
Number 3, Michael, is ignoring visa and work permit details.
Yeah, we definitely see that a lot. Let me give one big piece of advice with this one. You are not the exception to the rule. The government is so strict. If you meet the requirements, there is a great chance you are going to get employed and get a great visa. But if you don't meet the requirements, don't lodge something that you're going to get a rejection for and go through all that effort. Work with people in advance to get qualified so you are just undeniable, because really they are so strict with the requirements.
On that point, we get a lot of questions from our own candidate pools around, can't there be a little exception for this bit? Can't there be a little bit of an exception for this bit? Maybe my English language score wasn't quite high enough, or maybe my experience was maybe a couple of months short of what it needed to be. We don't make the decisions. It's the Australian government that makes the decisions, and they're pretty strict about it. So you just need to be well informed about what you need to be presenting as. Pretty much what I like to say to our candidates is you want to be able to make the decision-making process for the government as easy as possible. So don't hide the details that they need. They need to know. So, for example, if you're applying for a 482 visa, a temporary skills shortage visa for a medium-term stream, you are going to need to have 2 years of full-time equivalent work experience that's relevant over the past 5 years. You're just going to have to need that. And trying to slip through with 18 months, it's not going to work. So just make sure that you get those requirements met before you apply for a visa. Or talk to someone like us who can help you beforehand.
Okay.
Number 4?
Number 4.
I'm counting correctly.
Let's do it.
Number 4, assuming that language isn't really a big deal.
Okay. Language is a big deal, and especially coming to a country like Australia, English language is part of every visa that you are going to apply for. And the thing is, and it's become very, very fashionable lately, to chuck your CV into ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to write your CV and your cover letter, and it comes off beautifully. The expectation is then, as soon as you get in the interview, you can speak like that CV is written. And if there is a mismatch, I guarantee you are not getting your job. English language is so important. So one of the things we've got our candidates doing is using conversational AI tools to be able to practice their English. Conversational English is very different to written English, and the way language is used in places like India, Nepal, the Philippines, it's actually quite different to how we speak conversationally in Australia. And so find some ways to practice. It will serve you so well. And the other tip that I have is watch YouTube videos from the country that you're planning on going to. You'll hear how they talk differently.
One little plug for us, if you go to our website, The Placing Co., so it's www.theplacing.co. Go there. there's the English language requirement page. There is a bunch of resources there. There are courses, there are resources. You can download them all free. Check it out, and you can practice on that too. GPT. Just one other thing about GPT. Australian English is a little bit different to American English. So a lot of our words, say, for example, specialised, the S at the end of specialised, for us would be a Z in American English. We can tell if you've put GPT through your CV. So try and make the language Australian English. That's very, very much appreciated by Australian employees, appreciated by us when we're reviewing your CVs, and it makes the job a whole lot easier.
That's the thing. Words like honor as well in American spelling will be HONOR. In Australian English, we have a U at the end, HONOUR. And so just be wary. The English spelling is different depending on which country you're going to.
They're basic things, but they do speak a pretty... My phone's ringing there. We'll move that. They're pretty basic things, but they do speak volumes when you've got an employer or us or an agent looking at your CV, at your documentation. We can see those little bits and pieces. It does make a bit of a difference. Number 5? We up to number 5?
We're up to number 5 already.
All right. Number 5 is relying only on making job applications. You really do need a local expert to help. I spend a fair bit of time on Facebook groups trying to help out as much as I can. A lot of people get very, very frustrated because they're applying for jobs by themselves. Even nurses. We do a whole lot of healthcare work, but we work in a whole lot of other sectors too. But with nurses, there is an enormous shortage of nurses in Australia, as most of you probably know. But those people who are overseas qualified nurses trying to get a job in Australia and they're just trying to do it by themselves, they can often have a whole lot of trouble trying to find a job. Often they struggle and ultimately don't find a job. So try and connect with an expert, try and connect with someone who's got networks with employers that's happy to help you. Michael?
Yeah, so a lot of these organizations receive hundreds, if not thousands, of job applications for each job that they put out. And if you're doing direct applications, number one, they make a file about you. So they know your CV, they can track any sort of attempts you've made to be employed, and your resume becomes stale in the market. And then the other factor to consider is if you are going to get paid a lot of money, as you do on most sponsored visas for Australia, for instance, those jobs tend to come through networks a lot more than they do through cold applications. And so consider networks, consider the people that you're going to work with in getting you sorted for Australia. Far more valuable to put time into that than scattergunning your CV across the market, because I guarantee you it is just going to fall flat unless, it's an exception to the rule. So pay attention to that. Don't be in a rush. This is a long-term investment that you're doing. You're moving somewhere for a very long time. Take the opportunity to get yourself directly connected into these employers through people who they already trust. And that is going to lead to a lot more trust in you, and jobs can happen much quicker.
Isn't there a saying that 90% of jobs are never advertised? Something
Pretty
like
sure
that.
that's true.
80%, 90%. Most jobs are never advertised. The jobs that we place our candidates into, they're not advertised, okay? Yep. They rely on our networks with existing employers in Australia. So it really does help. And plus, we've got the existing relationships with the employers, so we can give them a good reference for the candidates that's coming through, so they can be confident that the placement's actually going to be successful.
So we have a lot more tips, tricks, and details coming to you guys in our future episodes. We're doing CV breakdowns. We've got questions from people like yourselves who are overseas at the moment, wondering how do I get hired in Australia, and we're going to run through all of those. We're going to do interview techniques, communication techniques, you name it. There's also going to be a link below to sign up to our coaching course. We want you involved.
Enormous discount for YouTube viewers.
That's true.
Enormous.
Too. Get involved
50%.
in the process as soon as you can. Like and subscribe to our channel. Hit the ring notification as well to find out each time we upload a video. And feel free to get in touch with us anytime. The link is below.